Another successful kill. Dominic Franklin, pilot in the US Space Corps, lays deep in stasis, his vivid dream of being a World War II combat pilot playing out in his mind, feeling every sensation and sound as it runs its course, unable to discern the virtual from his reality. Addicted to the thrill of the chase, he toyed with the Japanese Zero for longer than he should have, and now he would pay the price. Looking down at his instruments, he realizes that his low fuel warning light has been trying to attract his attention for some time. How long exactly is of momentary concern as his engine begins to cough sporadically, sending it into scattered convulsions, desperately trying to cling to life, ultimately resulting in it flatlining. Dominic, trying to ward off any feelings of panic, desperately scans his surroundings for somewhere to land. Coming up short of any options, he realizes he'll have no choice but to ditch. He quickly attempts a mayday call back to his base, with no response. He fights the controls in order to get the plane to the surface at a velocity and trajectory that won't kill him on impact. He skips onto the water, still at a speed where it hits the fuselage like concrete, and in doing so, tears the wings from the body and sends him sinking down into the warm Pacific Ocean. As his cockpit begins to flood with water, he quickly manages to release the canopy and his harness and kick himself free of the sinking hull and up toward the daylight. Gasping for air, he clings to one of the wings which has remained buoyant, taking comfort in the fact that his situation is not completely hopeless. Just yet. The sun soon sets, and Dominic scans the stars to try and discern which way he is drifting, in the sullen hope that he will soon find land, for he has no food, no water, and no proper shelter. The following day brings no good news. Dominic lies motionless on the metal wing of his fallen aircraft, trying to conserve the energy and prolong the time before the tortuous chills of heat stroke kick in, along with the crippling agony of insatiable thirst and hunger. He rolls into the water in order to cool himself off, holding on tightly to the edge, taking thorough care not to let go, for it would mean certain death if he did. He floats upright in the water for the remainder of the day, his mind continuing to play out all the possibilities of his ultimate fate, and how he can possibly alter it, if at all. He lies there in contented silence, watching the sun set before his eyes, feeling a sense of peaceful calm wash over him, just as he is suddenly torn from the edge of the wing and dragged into the depths below. A school of sharks had been stalking him for several hours and had finally committed to moving in on their kill. Dominic rapidly fought in all directions, tearing himself free from the jaws on his boot and kicked frantically to get back to the surface, where he scrambled to get on the wing and keep his legs out of the water. Lying on his back in shock and in pain, he watches the fins circle as the light dims to deep darkness all around, praying that the sharks don't get excited and breach the surface to attack him, or worse still, tip him over during the night and tear him to pieces. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Dominic was exhausted, thanks in part to the relentless dull misery of hunger and thirst, but mainly due to the occasional knock to the wing, which, although not enough to tip him, was certainly enough to briefly stop his heart. Squinting through his salt-encrusted lashes, he inspected all areas around him, and to his delight, the sharks not only seemed to be gone, it appeared that he had drifted towards an island with what looked like an American flag at full mast. Hours passed, and as Dominic drifted in and out of consciousness, he was certain to check he was still drifting towards shore, and that it was indeed an American flag rising from the jungle. Once on the beach, he rolled onto his back and slowly peeled his eyes open to see the silhouettes peering down on him. He was saved. He reached out for someone to take his hand, and he was met with a club to the head. Hours later, he awoke to the dim surroundings of the American camp. Unable to move, he quickly realized that he was tied up and was now at the mercy of the island natives that surrounded him. One stepped forward and shouted something in a tongue Dominic could not understand, as it held out the freshly severed head of an American soldier. Scanning around, as one of the more decorated natives began to shout at him, he realized that the entire camp had been massacred. The native was demanding something from him, to which he could only reply that he did not understand what was being asked of him. Dominic's response had no positive effect on the native. In fact, it appeared to only enrage him further as he cried out in a furious rage and raised his machete in preparation to strike. Then, a barrage of gunshots rang out as the natives were all executed where they stood, each falling to the ground one by one, silent and lifeless. Dominic, shaken and blinking through the blood that had been sprayed across his face and eyes, looked around for his savior, only to see, from the shadows, a Japanese soldier emerge with his bolt-action rifle still smoking. Dominic was deflated. His time had come, and although he prayed for a quick death, he knew that he was about to be subjected to unspeakable torture at the hands of the enemy. He stared deep into the eyes of his adversary and watched in terror as the soldier's evil smirk peeled back to reveal the 2 rows of rotten teeth, which quickly exploded all around him, along with most of his head. As the body fell, Dominic stared at the face of the American that had saved his life, and then was overwhelmed with a sense of relief as he bent down to remove his bindings and take him to safety. Back on the ship, the androids administered increased fluids to the oddly dehydrated body of Dominic Franklin, while a team of others attended to the pregnant Linda Bjorn, who had moments ago gone into labor. The androids knew that she would die, along with the child, if they didn't pull her out of stasis immediately. And in a pod next to hers, Dan Blacker smiled, for everything was going perfectly as planned.